You're listening to Boobies and Newbies, brought to you by the Frolic Podcast Network. Welcome to Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today marks our August Boobies and Newbies book club episode. And while the last few book club reads have been on the angsty new adult side of romance, today's read is about to get erotic as hell. Special thanks to the amazing team at Valentine PR and Literary Management for helping us put together this book club series. I couldn't do it without y'all. And now, I'm super excited to introduce my co-host for this month's book club because, like myself, she's a woman who wears many hats. You may know her as the founder and chief erotica officer at Body Bookworms, or as the voice behind I'm Not the Nanny, a blog about multicultural parenting, food, tech, and creativity. Her short story, Body Shots, was featured in Best Women's Erotica of the Year, Volume 3, and to top it all off, she's got a debut Own Voices romance out spring 2021 with Avon Books. Whew! Rather than continue to sing her praises, please join me in welcoming Tien Kim Lam.
Wow, that's a lot just hearing you read it. I'm tired.
I know. I was about to say, I'm not sure if I'm the first to tell you this, but you clearly do not have enough to keep yourself busy.
I drink a lot of coffee.
That must be it. That must be it. Like a running on coffee and sex toys, right?
Oh, I like that. That's a good tagline.
That could be for the next book.
That's right.
Well, I'm super excited, like I said, to have you here, Tien Kim, because I was first introduced to you through Body Bookworms, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is, in my opinion, the best sex toy subscription box for romance readers. And longtime listeners of the podcast might recognize the name because we've actually read 2 books from Body Bookworms for the podcast.
Woohoo!
I know. I have you to thank for introducing me to Jackie Lau's Ice Cream Lover, and I have become a longtime fan of Jackie's books.
Her books, I love her books. They make me laugh, and the sex scenes are fantastic.
They are, and you know what? She usually always has food involved too, which just makes me both happy and hungry all at once.
Do you follow her on Instagram? Because she's always posting these pictures of donuts of these cool flavors. And I'm like, man, I wish I lived near her so I could eat all these donuts.
Are you a donut fan like I am?
I actually only like one kind of donut. It's Krispy Kreme glazed. That's it. Like, I don't want anything fancy.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so original. Like, you just like it. Because really, honestly, when it comes to Krispy Kreme, like, the glazed is like the go-to. Like, you don't need to fancy it up at all.
No, and if you get it fresh, like when the hot sign is on and they just melt in your mouth, it's so good.
Oh, that is good. Although I am going to encourage you to also eat other donuts because I love donuts. Like, I love the fancy ones with like maple and bacon and all this stuff, but then I also love the ones you buy for like 75 cents with rainbow sprinkles on them.
No, I try them because my family, they like all the, like, my husband loves the maple with bacon donuts.
Yes.
Like, that's 2 of his favorite things. And it's just, maybe this is stereotypical Asian. It's just too sweet for me.
That's fair. That's totally fair. What if it was like one of those ones? Because I feel like some of the like fancier donut places have started playing around with flavors that like aren't the sweetest. Like, in fact, I feel like this is in Ice Cream Lover by Jackie Lau. One of the ice cream flavors they offer is durian. They also do like a sesame, like a black sesame flavor.
Yeah, I would do black sesame. I've never had durian, so I don't know if I would like it or not. I think it's like you either hate it or love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say I am a fan of ube donuts. I feel like ube is like made its way into like everything sweet. I've had like ube cupcakes, ube donuts, which I realize is basically a cupcake. So when it comes to like differentiating between desserts, it's a lot of them are super cakey, which I'm okay with.
Hey, you got to have your desserts and have, something sweet to keep you going.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, now obviously I definitely want to talk to you about body bookworms because this is such a fun box, and I'm so curious about where the idea for this came from. So run me through the history of body bookworms.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So about 17 years ago, I actually started selling sex toys at home parties, kind of like Tupperware
Yes.
or Mary Kay, and that's how I got my start. And when I had kids, I kind of pulled back doing the parties because I didn't want to be out on the weekends at night. I wanted to be home with my family. And this is around about the time I got back into romance books
Mm.
when my kids were born, because I just needed something easy to read, like, like sleep deprived mother, just tired. I wanted something kind of fun and fluffy. And I rediscovered them, and I'm like, okay, this is fun. And like, I forgot like how sexy these were. Actually, the ones I used to read in, when I was a teen were not quite as sexy as they are now. Right. I'm like, wow, these have gotten really sexy.
Yes.
The woman gets, or, like the guy goes down on the woman first before anything happens. And she has an orgasm. Like, I like this. And I was talking to some friends about it. I'm like, people get turned on with this. Like, why don't we, put a sex toy? Wouldn't you want a sex toy to go with your book? And that's how the light bulb went off.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Well, and it's so true because I mean, I feel like, we know as, romance readers that there's a little bit of something for everyone out there. And you're right. Like, why not pair it with, something battery operated or what have you? So,
Yeah. And romance is such a good way for us to try to try different fantasies that you might not want to do in real life, right?
yes.
So what might turn you on the page might not work for you in real life, but I think it's a good way to explore it in a really safe environment. So why not have the different tools and things that they use or try in the book for you to do in real life in a space that's comfortable for you?
Yeah, exploration. Because I feel like I feel bad for anybody who like kind of gets set in like their ways, quote unquote, of like, this is how we're having sex for the rest of our lives. Like, I am such a fan of education and learning more about everything, my body, what I like, what I don't like. And you're not going to find that stuff out unless you play around a little bit.
For sure, for sure.
And I think you're right. Both sex toys and romance are fantastic tools to explore, yourself and learn more about yourself and what you want. So I'm curious when it comes to selecting, both the toys and the romance reads for each box, what's that process like?
I like to say it's an art form. There's no, it's not the same every time. I up until our recent collaboration with Keeney at Smexy Books, I personally read
Yay.
all the books. I know she's fabulous.
I
The
love
site is
her.
fabulous. So I read them, and I read critically when I'm choosing for a box, and I go, okay, this scene is cool. Like, could I come up with a toy that would work with the theme of this scene, or it's something the character really likes? Like for Ice Cream Lover, I chose a glass toy because you can do temperature play with it. You can chill it in the
Mm-hmm.
fridge. You can put it in warm water. I'm like that. For me, like glass works with ice cream. So it just depends on the book and what it's about and the theme. So I try to pull from a little bit of everything.
I love a good theme. I love a good theme for everything. Why not for romance and sex toys too?
Yeah, that college critical reading, comes in handy.
It's so true. Well, and you mentioned your collaboration with Keeney. So, of course, I want to know more about that because I know with Body Bookworms, and correct me if I'm missing some, but I know that you offer multiple options. There's the quarterly box subscription, there's the monthly quickie box, which I've become a huge fan of, and you're celebrating your 5th-year anniversary now. So there's the limited edition 5-year anniversary box. And that, first of all, congrats on that. 5 years, I think, with anything is a major accomplishment. So well done, you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a long journey, and I'm glad that I almost gave up, honestly, after the first year. So I'm glad I stuck with it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, can you imagine how many businesses are out there that like could have been something where people did give up that first year because it's hard.
It's so hard to run a business, and I'm lucky that I have my husband is super supportive. He's the one that convinced me to start selling sex toys,
Oh,
17 years ago or however long that was. And he supports, I give him an idea like, what if I did this? He goes, do it. He doesn't even think. He's like, just do it. So and I'm like, but that's crazy. He's like, do it. Okay.
that's fantastic. I want a husband who supports my choice to sell sex toys. That sounds amazing.
I mean, where can you go wrong? They're going to benefit, right? Because you need an R&D department.
Every time I have anybody on this show where it's their first time reading romance, I feel like one of the main things we talk about is that, do you realize how many couples could benefit from reading romance together? Like this is a tool for everyone and their bedroom life. Like this would make so many people's lives so much saucier.
It definitely would. I actually introduced my husband to romance books a few years ago.
Love
And
it.
we would listen to the same book. So we started with Tessa Dare. He introduced me to romantic comedy movies when we started dating.
Mm.
And, I think in the 90s and like early 2000s, they were super popular. So we've probably seen so many of them. And now I'm glad they're making a comeback. But I was
Right.
telling him on Tessa Dare's books, and I said, it's like a romantic comedy, but with lots of sex.
Yeah,
and
it's
we
true.
and we had our own like mini book club. So he would listen to it on his way to work back when he used to commute to work. And he would come home, and in the evenings we'd be like, what chapter are you on? Let's talk about what just happened. So that was really fun.
I love that. Does he prefer to listen to the audiobooks as opposed to like reading it?
Yeah, he does better with audio stuff. And I actually like audiobooks too, if I'm picky about my narrators. But
Oh,
um
me too.
I
Me too.
yeah, I mean I read ebooks, print paper books, and audiobooks. Just what I don't really care. I just like books.
Oh yeah, yeah, exactly. I know I'm with you though on the audiobooks is that I haven't gotten as much into them just because I'm super picky when it comes to the narrator. So, I did just start one where the narrator has this really deep, like sultry voice and I'm really digging him. So,
Ooh.
yeah, I might have to stick with that one and I'm not going to mention it yet because it's actually our book club pick for September. So,
Oh, fun.
I will save that one and I will tell you that if anybody does want to join the book club for September, the narrator for that audiobook, he just sounds tasty. So
Now, I have to say, when I'm reading to choose a book for the box, I prefer to read the words like on paper or on my tablet because I remember things better, and I can to highlight and take notes and go back and look at it. So yeah, I can choose the toys and all the stuff that goes with it.
well, and I think you do a really great job too of specifically choosing diverse romances.
Yes. So the Body Quickie is the monthly box, and this is one that's solely focused on diverse romances. And as an Asian American woman, finding diverse romances is a really important to me. When I got
Yeah.
back into romances, I was like, where? I went to my library. I'm like, where are all the diverse romances? And
Mhm.
I don't think at that time, and this was probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I didn't know where to look, but thankfully there's the internet, right? And like this is gonna date me, but back then, like you couldn't find that stuff on the internet, and I
Right.
only knew of like the main Asian American romance writer I knew was Cecilia Tan because I discovered her back in my college days when she was writing a lot of erotica,
Mm.
and she's very prolific. She's got all kinds of awesome romances. And I just wanted like I'm like, there's got to be more than one person. So thankfully, I could look on Amazon for things because people were self-publishing their books, so it was just a lot easier to access. And last year, after once again the big hubbub with RWA, the Romance Writers of America, of which
Mhm.
I am a member, and about Rita's having very few uh very few, if any, white finalists. I mean, finalists of color,
Non-white. Yeah.
non-white, right? And I thought, what can I do with my platform with Body Bookworms to help
Yes.
diverse writers to help people find these diverse writers. And, people say, I don't know where to look. Well, you just have to search harder, right? So like, why not take some of the guesswork out of it? And that's why I decided to create the monthly box. So just to really highlight, and my goal with this box, the quickies, is to really focus on at least half of them are small, like like indie publishers, like really small publishers or self-published authors, because I think that they are the ones that could definitely use more exposure and to just really get their name out to a new audience who might not have found them otherwise.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely changing now, but clearly not enough that I feel like there used to be this negative connotation associated with independently published books. Specific. I mean, I'm speaking specifically about romance, not so much about other genres, but that people thought that if somebody was an indie published author, that their work somehow didn't have the same merit as something published by Avon or Berkeley or what have you. But I read so many indie authors. I know you promote so many indie authors, and their voices are just as relevant, just as fantastically written as so many authors that are being, published mainstream, that I really do encourage everyone to pick up an indie author. And if you can't find one, you subscribe to Body Bookworms, you listen to a podcast, you seek them out on Twitter, because let me tell you, they are there, and there are plenty of them.
Oh, romance Twitter. My TBR list is so long thanks to romance Twitter. And then I will just buy books based on certain people's recommendations, and they'll sit there on my tablet for I don't know how long, but I have it. I'll read it one day.
It's true. It's so true. I have like some advanced copies on my Kindle waiting for me that I have not gotten to yet, because I just keep seeing more books recommended on Twitter. And so I pick those up first and think, hey, what's one more book?
Right, because they don't take up space. They're in your little tablet, in your Kindle.
Yeah, and other lies we tell ourselves.
Exactly.
Well, I'm super excited for your September Quickie Box, because this is your collab with Smexy Books and Keeney Allen, yes?
Yes.
Oh, so excited. And can you tell everybody what book is included in the box? Because I think it's a fantastic choice.
No, I haven't read this book, but Keeney sold me. So once we're done talking, I can recording this, I can move on to my next read. But she chose White Whiskey Bargain by Jody Slaughter. And it is about a Mexican-American man and a Black woman, and they are in the moonshine business. So, of course, the theme is over the moon. And she says there's some really good oral sex scenes in it. So if you like oral sex scenes, and it's the guy. He's really enjoying himself, she said.
Oh, yes. I'm a Jody Slaughter fan, by the way. We read a Jody Slaughter book for the podcast back in February called Just One More, and it was a Valentine's Day romance, and it was very, very sweet, very sexy. I feel like it was actually probably one of the first romances I read featuring a Black hero and Black heroine. So I'm a big fan, so I definitely recommend. Jody is one of those indie authors that people should check out, so please do so and pick up a box from Body Bookworms.
Yeah, and you have to tell me if you like Keeney's pairing.
Yes. Oh, I'm excited. Okay, well, and then last thing is, before we actually get to our topic of the day, which is this fabulous book, I want to know about your book, because all I know so far is that it is, and I quote, a steamy second chance contemporary romance between a sex toy seller and a soul food restaurateur set in Washington, D.C.
Wow. Not that I have any personal experience with this or anything.
Yeah, wait, I feel like you really had to think outside the box for this one.
Wow. And, and people, I'm sure people will ask if this is about me and my husband. My husband is Black. And, I was like, why not? Like, this is, I don't know if I've ever read a romance with an Asian heroine and a Black hero. And this is a story I would have loved to have seen, because our
Yeah.
relationship was very tumultuous in the beginning, because my family did not approve of me dating him because of
Mm,
his race. But I wanted to read stories with pairings similar to ours where it wasn't about race, right? And
right.
basically this, and I have this whole series planned. So buy pre-order my book when it's ready so I can write another one. But my plan is to feature, couples of color, whether it's, same culture pairing, interracial pairings, where the the conflict does not have to do with their skin color, because I think
Thank
that's really
you.
important. There are other people who write that, but that's not what I want to write. I want to write the happy things, because there are
Yes.
relationships out there where that has never been a conflict, and I think it's really important to highlight that we're allowed to be happy and we're allowed to have our happily ever afters.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. In fact, I feel like this is a conversation we have on the regular on romance Twitter, is that,
Mhm.
why is it that people of color, and more lately it's been specific to black characters, like why can they not have these happily ever after stories where it doesn't have to be about race? And I think you're right. I feel like it's really rare for me to read an interracial romance where it's not between someone who is not white with someone who is white. I feel like even in interracial romance, typically there's at least one white character. So I find that very refreshing that, you'd be writing from a different perspective.
Well, I'm glad to have more of it out there. They
Yeah,
say
yeah.
write the story that you want to read, and that's what I'm doing.
Yes, yay. We would have, I feel like, a lot more amazing romance out there in addition to what we already have if people wrote the story that they wanted to see. So I know that I want to see this one. So I just have to wait until May 2021, which I'm a little upset about.
Well, it should come at no surprise that this book is very sexy, and there are lots of food descriptions in there too, because I love eating and I love cooking, so it's gonna appear in my food, in my work.
Okay. So don't read while hungry. This is like the warning. I want people to start featuring this alongside like content warnings and trigger warnings. Is like, do not read when hungry.
Okay, that's good to know.
That might just be me, but it's something that I think about a lot because I also love to eat. So something to look forward to, though, for sure, in addition to everything else that you already do. So where can everybody find and follow you and all of your many ventures?
Well, you can follow me on my author website, which is tinkimlam.com. That's my full name. Or you can go to Body Bookworms, and that's all kinds of fun stuff on our blog if you're looking for educational things about sex, lube, or toy recommendations. We got them.
Yes, she does. And you can pick up your September box or your collab with Smexy Books. Woohoo!
Yes, please do.
All right. So, for those of you new to the podcast, we've been fortunate enough to partner with the amazing team at Valentine PR and Literary Management to bring you, readers and listeners, the Boobies and Newbies Book Club every month. And the best part is, you get to contribute to the discussion. And just by doing so, you are automatically entered into a giveaway. All you have to do to get involved is to follow us at Boobies Podcast across social media. And if you want more specifics about the book club itself, aka what we're reading, when we're reading it, please visit us at boobiesandnewbies.com/book club. So also make sure to listen through to the end of this episode, as we will be announcing this month's giveaway winner as well as our book club pick for September. First things first, though, we have got a book to discuss, and she is spicy. That's putting it mildly, wouldn't you say?
There was a lot of sex in there. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, me neither. Everyone's been forewarned. So for today's book club, we will be reviewing The Pool Boy, book number 2 in the Nashville Neighborhood series by Nikki Sloan. And this erotic age gap romance was published earlier this month in August 2020, and it's available for $3.99 on Amazon Kindle edition. So we will get into spoiler talk in the second half of the show, but I'd love to kick things off with a book synopsis and some spoiler-free initial impressions. And that's because we keep our book club discussion relatively spoiler-free. I have a thread open in our Facebook event dedicated solely to spoiler talk, but the rest of our book club chat focuses on fun things like themes, tropes, hypothetical character casting, etc. So, before we dive in, here is the brief Goodreads synopsis for The Pool Boy by Nikki Sloan. Nothing says happy birthday like catching your husband in a compromising position with his boss, his male boss. Why, hello, midlife crisis. I'm starting over, but this time I'm doing it right. Or at least I'm doing what I want. Taking the day off from work to hang out poolside? Yup. Do I leave the swimsuit in my house? Sure. Does my hot 20-something pool boy happen to catch me naked? Oh yeah, he does. And he likes what he sees. A lot. My best friend keeps telling me to have a fling and get back out there, but I'm not so sure she meant for me to do it with her son. Ooh.
I did not read the synopsis before I read the book, so all of that was a surprise to me.
Well, it really does set you up, like I said, we'll save spoiler talk for later in the episode, but it really does set you up in the synopsis for what to expect. Like, okay, she starts dating a much younger man. Oh, he's also the son of her best friend. Okay, clearly we know that there's going to be a problem here. So, as someone might have guessed, yes, there are issues and tension. But again, we will get into that with spoiler talk. So, keeping in mind the fact that we will jump to spoilers later in the episode, I'll ask you, Tian Kim, what were some of your initial impressions of the book?
First of all, age gap is not a trope I seek out.
Okay.
Not that I'm against it. I just don't. It's not like one of those things where I'm like, oh, I got a one click.
Right.
And I don't remember if. See, I think I forgot that you told me it was age gap. So I'm like, okay.
Just roll with it.
Right? But I trusted you. So,
Okay, good. I'm glad.
Just dove in the deep end for our full metaphors here.
Oh, look at you go. I love it.
So the age gap was wider for me than I would be comfortable with in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to kind of push that aside as I was reading it and just kind of enjoy what the characters were going through. And I thought that it was the heroine, her name is Erica.
Mm-hmm.
I liked her transformation of her finding herself again, her true self after, getting out of this marriage that was not good for her.
Right.
She was not happy. And I think that was the part that I enjoyed, where she was just really embracing who she was and where she was going and she knew what she really wanted out of life. Right. Until she, runs into the pool boy. Question her goals.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know what? He surprised me a lot too. Like Troy, I'm with you. I'll actually mention too that I did ask our book club about age gap. And for the most part, there was an overwhelming amount of responses where people mentioned that they love age gap romance. And Beth Cherry was one of our book clubbers, and she mentioned that she's hit or miss when it comes to age gap. And that's kind of where I land. I appreciate an older woman, younger man at age gap a lot more than I appreciate an older man, younger woman. And I feel like that's just because we've become so accustomed to seeing the older man with the younger woman that I like to mix it up. I want to see a cougar with some young hot stud. I'm into that. That's cool by me, but I'm with you. I don't necessarily seek out an age gap romance, and this one is a pretty big gap. They've got 20 years between the two of them. So
yeah, she's almost twice his age, which I don't remember what the formula to be a cougar is, but I'm pretty sure it works, right?
Yeah, that's right. I just remember it being something about it's half your age plus 7. I don't know. It's too much math for me to even think about it. But that I feel like if they were strangers and it was an age gap romance, that's one thing. But the fact that she's the son or he's the son of her best friend, like that's where like the real tension is for sure.
Right. I'm like, okay, how is this gonna go? Like, what is gonna happen here? With it's her best friend, the one who got her through this bad marriage, and now she's with her best friend's son.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Her friend told her to have a fling. So there you go. Consider her flung.
So those of you with 20-something-year-old sons, don't tell your best friends to have fling. Put an exception in there.
It gave me a very like Desperate Housewives vibe for sure.
Gosh, that's what my husband said too. He's like, "You Desperate Housewives?"
Did he read this one too?
He did not read it with me.
Oh man.
But I did give him a play-by-play as I was reading through it.
Oh good. I would love to have his take on it for sure.
Well, I haven't told about the ending, so I don't know. I'll report back.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think what I found refreshing about this one being an age gap is that, you know, it wasn't so much about their age, like as time went on, like the longer they were together, and I won't get into specifics yet, but the longer that they were together, the less I thought about their ages, because it really just it almost didn't seem to matter after like a certain amount of time until, you know, we're reminded that he is in fact the son of her best friend. Like that, again, that to me was like the real tension. So I kind of liked that in that I didn't think about it so much because I don't know, did you read the first book in this series?
I did not, but those two characters make they're on the page a lot during this book.
Yes, yeah. So for anybody listening, I did mention before that this is the second book in the Nashville Neighborhood series. And you can read each book as a standalone. I also have some juicy deets on the next book in the series, straight from Nikki Sloan. So I'll bring those up a little bit later. But one of the first questions I asked the book club was, when it comes to reading a book series, how strict are you about reading a series out of order? So clearly you didn't read the first book in this series, but did you find that hindered your reading experience at all?
No, not at all. I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. I didn't even realize it was this. See, I'm so bad. I didn't read anything about this book before I jumped in. I didn't realize until the very end that this was the second in the series, and I saw the title of the first one, which is The Doctor. Is that the title of the first one? And I said, oh, they must be the couple from the previous book. So it definitely did not ruin anything for me.
Yeah. So you do meet the couple from the first book in this one. The first book in the series is called The Doctor. I know we had a few people in the book club who mentioned they had read that one first. We also had somebody who mentioned that they had bought that one, but they jumped into the Pool Boy first because they were more excited. And who wouldn't be with that sexy as fuck cover of the Pool Boy? So I totally understand starting with that one. But yeah, where do you stand usually on like reading series, Tian Kim? Like, I mean, do you start at the beginning? Are you a stickler for like reading it in order?
I used to be,
and then not so much.
Because some romance series are really long, right?
Yes.
I mean, some have, some only have 3, but then there are some like 5, 6, like who knows? And as long as they're all standalones, I'll just jump in wherever.
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten to that point too. And you know what I find happens more often than not is even if I start a series with like book 3 or 4, if I really like the characters in that series, I will probably go back and read the first couple books. Yeah. So, I mean, I know everybody has like their own opinion when it comes to series. So, if you have to start at the beginning, I get it. That's how I am with TV shows. I refuse to like jump in anywhere in the middle. But yeah, I'm with you. For books, I can make an exception.
Yeah, and I like to know in advance. So if a book you have to read in order, maybe like Sarah MacLean's Bare Knuckle Bastard series, like yeah, they're kind of standalones, but like you get a much better reading experience if you read the series from book 1.
Right. Yeah, it definitely adds to the experience for sure. Like we recently read The Devil of Downtown by Joanna Shupe for the podcast, and that was one where this was the 3rd book in the series, and I had read book 1 and then not book 2 and then jumped into book 3. And I feel like I don't usually do that, but I also felt like I really appreciated the characters in book 3 more than I had at the start of the series too. So I can see how there's like, positives and negatives for both ways to go about it.
Yeah, because you get to know the characters and they kind of become your little family as you're reading the series.
Yeah. So let me tell you that one of the options that I posted for book clubbers was to ask questions that they wanted me to direct to author Nikki Sloan, because Nikki and I had a happy hour chat in the Valentine PR book club group on Facebook, which if you're not a part of, I definitely recommend joining. There's lots of fun stuff about upcoming books and what have you. And one of the questions that was posed was, how did she come up with the idea for this particular series? And when I asked Nikki that, I definitely was not expecting her answer, which was porn tropes.
Ah,
Yeah.
well, I think we lucked out with the pool guy and not the pizza delivery boy.
Yes, yes. Which, by the way, let me tell you, we read a pizza delivery romance in our very first season of Boobies and Newbies.
There's something for everybody in romance.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. And so the first one was playing off the hot doctor, and the second one, the pool boy, was obviously playing off of the pool boy. The next one in the series, which is called The Architect, Nikki mentioned in our chat that it is going to be a neighbor romance, and also a poly relationship between two men
Ooh.
and a woman. Yeah. So I'm excited about that one. Nikki writes primarily age gap. She loves writing age gap, as well as, like she said, anything erotic. So you can expect when you pick up a Nikki Sloan book that they're going to be on the steamier side for sure. And I don't think we were disappointed by that in this one. So there's plenty of sex to be had in
different kinds.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm appreciative of. I feel like every time we do our rating for Heat, I'm a sucker for the amount as well as the variety. So I appreciate a nice variety.
Right, because you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. Maybe I should try that the next time. I'm
Yeah.
doing it with my husband,
Yeah, so I know that we can expect the next book in the series in early 2021, and she does have plans to write at least one more book after that. So who knows what porn trope she'll come up with next, but I just found that so hysterical that was like the idea behind this.
I'm gonna have to make a note of that when I need ideas for books.
Right, just like turn on some porn, right? It's great. So I'm not sure if this is something you think about when you're reading a book, Tian Kim, but do you ever think about, like, if this book was to be made into a movie, TV series, what have you, do you envision specific people playing the parts of the characters?
I don't, because I'm terrible with actor names, but because of Desperate Housewives, I kept thinking of Eva Longoria.
Ooh.
And what I mean, of course, that was what, I don't even know, like 10 years ago Desperate Housewives started, and her pool boy. So that's whom I kept seeing in my head when I was reading this.
That's fair. That's totally fair. Yeah, no, and you know what? It was, I know that this was something I asked the book club, was who they envisioned as Erica and Troy. And I had like a really specific idea in my mind of, I always say her name wrong, Carla Gugino. And she's actually turning 50 next year, so she's definitely in like the ballpark of like Erica's age range. But she I don't know why this is what I think of her from. She was in the movie San Andreas with The Rock.
Yes, I love that movie. I love The Rock.
I do too. Okay, so you know who I'm talking about, his like hot ex-wife in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, and they had great chemistry in that movie. I could totally see her as Erica.
Yes, yeah, I think she is a babe, and so that was who I envisioned. Somebody else suggested Chantel Van Santen, who I'm not familiar with, but she is a gorgeous model and actress. And when it came to Troy, I know that in the book he's compared to Zac Efron. So we had more than one person in the book club mention that they pictured Zac Efron as the pool boy. Although he's got a nice daddy looking, look going for himself now.
Yeah, he's got that beard and everything, right?
Yeah, I'm digging it. So I don't know if they were picturing Zac Efron now or like Zac Efron like 10 years ago, because
I'm a fan of Zac Efron 2020.
Yeah, I'm not into the boyish guys. I like them with a little more experience.
Yeah, me too. Me too. In fact, there was somebody else mentioned named Peyton Meyer, who I don't know, but apparently he's best known for being on Girl Meets World, which already tells me that he's much too young for me to consider attractive. Because I remember watching and growing up with Boy Meets World. So the fact that this guy is young enough to be on Girl Meets World, I can't even think about it because like it's just too much.
I'm Googling all these people because I don't know.
Yeah, he's
cute. He's got a baby face. It could work.
That's why he doesn't work for me, is because I can't do the baby face.
No.
But I realized that, Troy's supposed to only be in his early 20s. So, maybe he would have a baby face.
Well, according to Google, Peyton is 21 years old. So there you go.
That's too young. I can't.
I feel like a very old lady. Seriously, like looking at these kids.
I know. The first time that I went to like a sporting event, back when we went to those, and they announced like the next guy coming up to bat, and he was born like 3 years younger than 3 years after me. I was like, wait a second. I don't understand. I'm sitting here and this professional athlete is on the baseball field and you're telling me he's 3 years younger than me. I feel gross. That's not to say if you're out there and you're dating somebody much younger than you, that's wrong. It's just weird for me to think about. Or like, for me, it's when people weren't born at a certain point in time or like history. Like the fact that kids graduating high school now weren't alive in the 90s freaks me out.
I remember meeting somebody at a book event, like someone in the audience, and she said that the year she said when she was born, it was the year I graduated high school. I was like, oh, okay. I feel so old right now.
Yeah, it's nuts. I used to work as like a camp counselor, and the kids that were like my campers are now graduating college, and I just, oh gosh, what is time now, right? 2020 isn't real.
But speaking of young guys, I thought Troy was really mature for a 24-year-old.
Oh, totally.
Which made the age gap work in this book.
Yeah, and that's something that I definitely do want to talk about more in the spoiler talk, because I think you're right. They're almost on like an even level playing field when it comes to like emotional maturity, because of like all the stuff that Erica is dealing with. And it was really interesting. And I'm with you. I think that's one of the reasons why I was able to kind of like set aside the age gap, like kind of like what you were talking about with writing a book where you have interracial characters, but the problem isn't necessarily their race or like, racism. Like I kind of looked at it that way, where I'm like, I realize that there's an age gap between them, but I don't think the age gap is necessarily the issue. It's never really the problem between them. It is with his mother, but I think she would have had a problem with her friend dating her son if her son was 10 years older too. Like, I think it's more of the fact that he's her son.
Right. Yeah, because the age gap is not that major conflict between them. It's something entirely.
Yeah, exactly. So we can totally talk on that a little bit more when we get to the spoilers. But I will also mention that there is a variation of the rock star romance trope if you're into that. He's more of a country bluegrassy type rock star, but that's kind of fun. I like the whole music element. Are you a fan of like a rock star romance?
I do like those. I think they're fun. And I don't think you can go wrong with a hot guy playing the guitar and singing love songs. I feel like that's probably a weakness for a lot of us.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and you know what? Erica was a surprise, a singer, musician as well. So that was kind of cool. I really did like that they could connect with music, because I feel like music's one of those things that kind of like transcends time too, like kind of like food, not to bring food up again.
Oh yeah, because she's an agent, right? And a manager, and so that she really has the insight, and she's not just a fan, which I appreciated.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think that definitely brings them together a lot. I will say there was a lot more like heart and emotion in this one than I was expecting from, I guess, an erotic romance titled The Pool Boy that's based off of porn. Like I never would have expected it to be so emotional, or as emotional as it was.
But I think if it wasn't that emotional, a lot, for someone who doesn't choose to read age gap romance, I might not have been able to really buy their relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because then when we think about erotica, erotica doesn't necessarily have to have this like HEA, happily ever after. But I think it's kind of what bridges the gap between erotica and romance with this one, is the fact that there are so many feelings and emotions like tied into it.
Yep.
Awesome. Well then, everybody, I hope you join us after we take a quick break for a word from one of our Frolic Family podcasts. We will be right back with Spoiler Talk.
Hi, I'm Elle Penelope, and I'm an author of epic fantasy and paranormal romance. My podcast, My Imaginary Friends, is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. On the show, I give you, dear listener, a weekly look behind the scenes of my life writing and publishing books. I talk about creativity, inspiration, writing routines, this week's best thing, and more. One reviewer said, it's like sitting down with a writer friend to have coffee and discuss all the writerly things. So if you're an established or an aspiring writer, or a reader who always wanted a peek into an author's life, please check it out. New episodes post on Mondays, and you can find me at myimaginaryfriendsshow.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. So we are about to dive into spoiler talk for The Pool Boy. And okay, one thing I want to point out, and I'll ask you about this in a second, Tien Kim, is just I have made it like my mission. I don't want to say in 2020, because I feel like I probably didn't start doing this until a few months ago, but I have made it my mission to start reading books cover to cover. So that includes everything from the acknowledgments to the author's notes, everything in between. And let me tell you, if you are not doing this yet, you are sorely missing out on so many fun anecdotes and thank yous and ridiculous acknowledgments that just crack me up. So the reason I bring this up is because in Nikki Sloan's final notes of the book, she writes, and lastly, fuck you to COVID-19 and the year 2020. Writing a book when the world was on fire really freaking sucked.
As someone who was in revisions for her book during, in May and June, it really was hard to concentrate on writing happy endings when everything was on fire around you.
Yeah, that's been, anytime I've interviewed an author in the last few months, that's been something we've talked about, just because I think a lot of people have this idea that if you're a writer or you do anything that's remote from home already, that this transition wasn't really a transition. Like you're just doing what you normally do. And I feel like so many authors I've spoken to, and I'm sure you can relate to this as well, is they've had so many issues with, some of them who have kids, keeping the kids out of their office while they work. A lot of them have trouble concentrating or finding inspiration to write happy love stories during a dumpster fire of a year. So can you speak to that too?
Yeah, luckily that I was in revision. So the bulk of the story was already written. I didn't have to figure out how my couple got to the happy ending. But
good.
My kids have this habit of walking in on me. I don't have an office with the door in our small apartment. So my husband finally hung up curtains in June. But they still walk in. And if I'm working on a sex scene and they walk in and they'll start reading out loud, I'm like, okay. This is not going to work. So that's the hard part. And having them home all day, because I really prefer to write, in my bubble where it's quiet. I got my classical music going. because I really want to be able to, because I can get easily distracted. So I really need to be able to like dive into what I'm writing, and just having everyone around, moving around, walking around and talking. It was really hard. But the other thing is like not knowing when things are going to end. I think it just
Yeah.
makes, I think this is for everybody. I think it just heightens that anxiety, right? You're like, okay, I'm in this state of preparedness or whatever.
Right.
And you can only maintain that for so long before your brain and your body's like, okay, we can't do this anymore. Let's just give up. And so I think that is also hard in general for everybody.
That's the whole idea behind horror movies, is like when you're, and I can speak to this just because like I went to school for screenwriting, but when you're writing a horror movie, whether it's a short or long film, the whole idea of suspending fear in your viewer is not showing them the monster as long as possible, or not showing them the way to defeat the monster as long as possible. So that's why something like this is like the scariest thing to me, because you can't see it. It's not something you can touch. I mean, it's so intangible but so deadly that it's like it's infecting, not just like as a virus, but it's just infecting the minds of people and the emotions of people. And you're right, we don't know the ending. Wow, this just took like a really dark turn that I did not expect to go down, and I will immediately back away from, but I totally understand what you're saying. And really, this was all about me asking you, do you read books cover to cover?
Well, before I say that, but this is why I'm turning more to romance during this time period to read, because I need that happy ending, that fun sex, that banter and all that stuff, because I need something happy and fun to look forward to, that I don't have to think about everything happening around us. And yes, I do read books cover to cover.
Good.
I always skip the table of contents if there is one. I don't know.
That's fine. Yeah.
Pointless. Yeah.
Well, let this be a lesson for everybody that's not reading cover to cover, because we had several people in our book club who said that they don't. Do it. Please do it. It's like watching a movie through the end credits, which I didn't do until I went to grad school and had a professor yell at us for not watching through the credits. It's basically acknowledging and appreciating all the work that went into making something and everybody who was a part of that. So, do it. But you might also find some really fun anecdotes, like the fact that Nikki Sloan says fuck you to COVID-19.
And you know what I like is when I read the acknowledgments and the author thanks another romance author that I read. And I didn't know they knew each other. That's so cool.
It's so
I kind of have a little fangirl moment there.
I know, it's true. So many fangirl moments when reading romance, for sure. So, okay, let's dive into spoilers. Hit me with your spoiler talk.
Okay. The whole like beginning where Erica talks about her transformation to really fall in love with herself, her body again. I don't normally read books where that is such a big highlight, because I'm a plus size woman and I've gone through this entire journey of being body positive, and it kind of threw me off because I really got the impression like she didn't feel sexy until she lost weight and until she got the boob job. And I'm like, okay, but I don't want I don't want that to be what makes her feel sexy again. But I understand that it works for some people and some people need that.
I definitely hear what you're saying. And I do agree, because I'm also a plus size woman, have always been a plus size woman, and will always be a plus size woman. And
That's why, because I like to eat.
It's true. It's true. We've already talked about food like 8 times on this episode. Clearly that's not changing. But I will say I do listen. I listen to a lot of podcasts where some of my favorite podcasters are the skinniest, most tone, beautiful, by our typical American beauty standards women. And to hear them talk about the fact that they have like body dysmorphia, or like they don't feel beautiful and everything, my first inclination is always to think, what are you talking about? You're gorgeous. But I mean, I have to kind of battle with myself too, to think, oh my God, this is something that people struggle with, even if they're not, you know, we're just used to seeing it through our lens because we're used to seeing the fact that we paint, you know, plus size women specifically in such a negative light so often. So I'm with you. My first inclination was the same, where I was kind of like, I don't want to hear about her getting thin and
just to point out, there's no fat
boobs.
shaming in this book at all. It's purely how I interpreted it. You know, there's no fat shaming at all in this book, and it's just my experience and how I felt about my body and my journey, you know, loving my body. That just, you know, didn't rub me the right way at the beginning.
I kind of like that she got bigger boobs. I was sort of like, hey, you know what? You go, girl. Because I do feel like I liked seeing that because she was like taking more agency over herself. Because like up until then, she had talked about how she never felt sexy to her husband because he didn't want to have sex with her. I mean, little did she know, and little do we know as a reader at that point, that it's because he's struggling with his own sexuality. But
right, it wasn't her.
Yeah,
it was him.
Exactly. But I do like the mention that, you know, she's like, hey, you know what? I've come to this point in my life where I want to celebrate me, and I'm going to do that. I'm going to make myself feel good. And I feel good when I look a certain way. So I'm going to do that. It's not my ideal, you know, beauty standard either. I'm with you on that one. I do also love that she has a drawer full of sex toys.
I mean, shouldn't we all? Variety.
I always think of that episode of Sex and the City where they're talking about their goodie drawers, and Samantha's like, I have a goodie closet.
One of these days, I will have a goodie closet. Right now, everything is safely hidden from young eyes.
Yes, the tiny humans. Oh, gosh. Okay, what else?
See, I stopped taking notes because I got so into the book. This is such a...
I mean, that's a good sign for sure. I did too. I'm with you. I kind of felt, and you know what? It's not a long book. Like, let me put that out there too. When I first got my copy of The Pool Boy, I was like, well, this is the second book in the series. Like, maybe I should read the first book first. And so I went and started the first book, and I was worried about timing and realized that the first book was over within a couple hours of reading.
Nice.
So I dove straight into The Pool Boy, diving into a pool. And that one is also a very quick read. So, I mean, if you are in the market for something sexy, something quick, these books are perfect candy to just like munch on really, really quickly.
Yeah, you know, and when I talked about this book to my husband, and you know, I'm telling him about the first sex scene where they're masturbating in the pool house together, whatever. And then my husband's like, "Oh, let me guess, he got it back up in like 10 minutes." I'm like, "Actually, that happened later in the book."
Because remember, he's 23 or whatever.
Yeah, well, it's funny because he's like, "Just give me 10 minutes, and I'll be ready again." Okay. Now, that's a fun fantasy, right? Like, who wouldn't want that?
I love a mutual masturbation scene in romance, too. That's like, one of my favorite things to read.
And that scene is great because I think that's where she truly felt sexy in her own right again, and not as what her body image, she needed her body image to be sexy, to like see this person find her so arousing. Mm-hmm. And it just, you know, it just really brought her into herself and be open about her sexuality and her pleasure.
And Troy makes the point of saying to, you know, like, look, I know you've got like your new boobs and, you know, your hot tone body, but I thought you were gorgeous before too. Like, and that's not to say I don't think you're gorgeous now, but I did like that he, you know, differentiated that he's like, look, I've always thought you were beautiful no matter what you look like. So that was like a first for Erica, because I think she mentions that her husband, they've been together for like 20 years. Like, so I'm assuming that he's one of, if not the only man that she's been with.
Right. And you know how we were saying earlier, on emotionally, they're on the same level because, you know, Erica hasn't had that many different relationships. Right. And I feel like Troy probably didn't have any serious relationships, right? Because he's only been out of college for a couple years. And he's been pining over Erica, we find out later, for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. So that was something that really appealed to me, was the whole idea that She, she's they say she's 44, she's 43 or 44. And the fact that she's basically going through, I know they call it a midlife crisis, but a lot of the like things that she's dealing with emotionally are things that I know my friends and I have dealt with in more of a quarter life crisis. So that it kind of made me feel like, yes, she's physically the older woman, the older character in this relationship, but I feel like he as well is so much more emotionally mature that they're almost on this even level playing field when it comes to their maturity levels. Because I feel like, and that was something that I asked Nikki about in our happy hour chat, was why do you think that there's more age gap romance between older men and younger women? And she said, because, when we think about older women and younger men generally mature slower than women do. So we're not necessarily looking, to play mommy for somebody, unless that's your thing, and that's totally chill. But so I kind of liked that it wasn't part of their relationship for her to take care of him or baby him in any way. They were very much adults in a partnership.
And even in the bedroom, like they took turns being the dominant person in the bedroom, which I thought was really fun and definitely takes away that stereotype where, the guy is in charge no matter his age or whatever.
Yeah, that was actually something that I marked down because I liked that they would mention that I think Troy asks her, there's some discussion of the fact that like neither of them has had anal sex before, but they're both like more than willing to like play around and experiment and like try new things. And he's just as willing to try things and learn from Erica as she is to, use him as her own personal sex toy, which he tells her to do. So it's absolutely fine.
And the thing that he does that she's never had anyone do is ask her what she likes and what she wants during sex. Like where he's eating her out on her kitchen counter. Mm-hmm. Like, tell me how you like it. Like, tell me what you want. Like, that is the sexiest thing a partner can do.
Yes.
Right? Is to ask what you want and then give it to you.
Oh, so hot. Yeah. The consent level in this book and the conversation, the communication. Oh, it's so good. And it's so much more mature than, I mean, I can say this with confidence as a 29-year-old woman, so much more mature than any man in his 20s that I've encountered. I knew that we had chosen the right book when the sex toys came out on the paper.
Well, it's funny because as soon as she talks about pulling out the sex toy, I'm like, I know exactly which toy this is.
I could picture it. I totally could picture it.
Yeah, and what I did like was like when he pulled her night drawer open to grab a condom and he finds her sex toys and it doesn't freak him out. Like he's pretty chill, about it. And the only thing that I don't like is like, oh, well, you're not going to need these now that you have me.
Thank
no,
Thank
sorry,
you. I knew you were going to say something. And if you didn't, I was going to, because I thought the exact same thing. I was like, wait a second. Don't you try and come up in here and tell her that she doesn't need sex toys or get to use them just because she got you dick. So the fact that she eventually pulls one out for them to use while they're having sex, I was like, okay, good. I'm glad we brought these back, because I was going to be very upset if they weren't incorporating sex toys into their sex.
Right. And that scene, I really like the power play because she tells him like he has to lay there and can't move and she's going to do whatever she wants to him. But really, she's using him to get off. Right. And of course, he's already said he enjoys watching her come. And she just, she just feels so free to be herself and really like get off. And she pulls that toy out and it's a clit suction toy, which I highly recommend if you haven't tried one. There's a lot of, we saw one at Body Bookworms on our website. Highly recommend you try it if you have a clitoris. It's a fantastic toy.
Amen.
And and he just has to watch because she's like, you can't come until I tell you can. And to see that power struggle. And then after she gets what she wants, he doesn't he like flip her over and just like, okay, now it's my turn.
Now my turn.
Right. And I just love that dynamic and the shift and how it just feels real.
Yeah.
Right. Because, when you're with a partner, like things aren't the same every time.
Right.
And you have that trust in someone to be able to say, I'll just lay here and you do, you take what you need, basically.
Yeah. I don't think we actually see them have sex the same way more than once.
I think you're right.
Now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure it's different it's like different locations, different positions. Like at one point I want to say she's doing like reverse cowgirl, and I'm like, I am here for it. Like if this is what I have to look forward to with Nikki Sloan's books, I will gladly sign up for the rest of this series and beyond.
And that's why I love about romance is like, maybe you never tried reverse cowgirl, with a vibrator. Like, why not? This character tried it. They had fun, so let's go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Inspiration. Well, we're talking about all of our favorite sexcerps, so we might as well, get down to it. Did you select a favorite sexcerp that you wanted to read for us? Grace us with a reading?
How long how long is it? I wasn't sure.
It can be like some people do a sentence, some people do a paragraph. So no need to go like super in depth. I know the one that I selected was actually the one we've been talking about with the vibrator.
That's what I think too.
That's okay. You can take that one if you want. We've got plenty to choose from.
Okay. All right. Well, between this and the anal sex scene, I thought that the dynamic between them was so good. And it's funny because what I think is most erotic about the sex scene is not necessarily what's happening, but the emotion and what's happening in their relationship.
Yeah. Because you do see like a lot more trust as it goes on.
Mm-hmm. So the scene that I have is right after she pulls out the suction toy, and she is about to blow, right? And he just can't handle it because it feels so good. Okay, so this is from Erica's point of view.
Okay.
The pleasure of the toy was so intense and distracting, it took a moment to become aware that the man beneath me was moving again. It was so subtle, just a fraction of an inch to entice me to allow more, to bend the rule, to seduce me. But it felt like the power I'd gained was starting to shift away, and I was enjoying it too much to give it up yet. I'd barely started. Hold still, I begged, and don't come before I do. He exhaled loudly, and the muscles of his abs strained when I resumed moving on his cock. That's not easy. He lay perfectly still, other than the way he panted. He feels so fucking good. Everything was buzzing from the toy and the fullness of him inside me, and it wouldn't be long before an orgasm roared through my body. Trembles shook my legs as I moved faster, and the slap of my body against him grew louder. My hair swayed while I rocked, the ends tickling the bare skin of my back. Slow, he groaned, staring at the rise and fall of my body on his. Careful. And I'm going to end that there.
Okay. God, it just... Yeah. That's it. That's all I have to say is just a deep longing sigh.
And this scene is like 3 chapters. They're having a good time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I'm pretty sure like if you like lay down the amount of time that is spent, the amount of pages spent on the sex scenes or foreplay, anything of that variety next to the other other pages that are purely plot driven, it's probably gonna come out almost even.
That's not a bad thing. I'm not complaining.
Oh no, not at all. So
did you pick an alternate scene to read since I stole yours?
I did. I love that scene too. Like when she pulls out the toy, it's great. And then like I mentioned, there's the scene where she's riding him reverse cowgirl and he kind of like fingers her ass, and then that's how they realize like, ooh, maybe this is something we should try. And then the one that I picked is when they actually have anal sex. And I have to say, I both laughed and also was like, oh no, at the same time, because right after this scene is when Erica's ex-husband basically sees the two of them having sex. And there's a line somewhere in there when she says, my husband that I caught having anal
Oh,
sex.
yes, that's such a good line.
Caught me having anal sex. Like, I was looking for that actual line, and I am having the hardest time finding it, but oh my gosh, that line was just epic. So this is right before that, and I think this is another one where they're out in like the guest house or the pool house. I will pick it up from, oh gosh, where to start? Oh, okay, here we go. This is what I loved, because they also mentioned coconut oil, which I appreciated immensely. All right, so this is where they start talking about her ass, and he asks, is this an ass made for fucking? And he asks her, you want me to fuck your ass right now? I want you to fuck my pussy. She wiggled her hips, taunting me. Her voice was seductive, yet breathless. There's a bottle of coconut oil in here, so you can use that for your fingers first. And then it was as if her directions were so hot she could barely speak them. Spread it all over your big cock, and when we're ready, you'll slide it inside my ass. I nearly came. Instead, I swallowed thickly. Yes, ma'am. Oh, so good. I love, by the way, that they mentioned coconut oil, because we know at this point that they're not using condoms because they're safe with each other and they trust each other. And I was like, that's a real good hot tip, people, because coconut oil is not compatible with latex condoms.
And let me tell you, I have read lots of romances where they don't use lube for anal sex. So I'm glad that they're using something.
Yeah. So lube, first of all, fantastic. Second of all, the fact that it's coconut oil. I don't know if I've actually ever read a romance where they've mentioned coconut oil as lube. So I am very appreciative of that.
Well, and then, porn, they just stick it in, right?
Right. Yeah. Magic.
Well, you have to like start with your fingers. Like you can't just stick it in there like that. That's not how it works in real life. So I think there's also an educational element that you might not realize as you're reading it, because if you watch porn, like you think that you're supposed to take, a giant penis back there, like right off the bat. And I like that that's incorporated into the play. That's super sexy.
Yeah, and they talk about it. She tells him exactly what she wants, which again is a recurring thing in this book. He asks her, she tells him. They're constantly communicating. They have the safe sex talk. I mean, I find communication so sexy, and I think you're right. It's because there's so much like realism in it that you're like, oh, I appreciate this. Like, I can still admire the fantasy of this, but also not disregard it completely.
Right. I mean, I don't know. I don't keep coconut oil around.
I do for cooking.
Just for that purpose.
Well, maybe you should. Maybe this book will inspire you.
Let's just say I have plenty of lube available at my disposal.
You're like, I don't need coconut oil. I have to say, there's really one thing that I don't love in this book, and it's not any credit to, this isn't a thing for Nikki Sloane's writing. I did not like Troy's mom whatsoever.
Yeah, I guess we needed a villain, right? But she definitely saw things a certain way, and she was, very pushy with Troy about what she wanted him to do, which I guess is a mother thing to do. So it might not be that far off.
It wasn't, you know what it was too, is like, because I knew, I mean, I think when you hear like that this woman is having this hot, torrid love affair with a younger man who also is the son of her best friend, like, okay, well, there's the conflict right there. Like, there's obviously going to be a problem with the friends. For me, it was like less about her being upset about them being together and more about the fact that she was just so pushy and insistent that he's working at like his stepfather's construction business when he clearly has zero interest in that. And like, she makes him move out of their pool house, or like their back house or whatever. Even though that would mean like, oh, I'll just leave and go live with my girlfriend. I mean, I did not understand her logic whatsoever.
Well, but I'm glad she came around, because I wasn't sure how that was going to be resolved.
Right.
Because it's such a big like, you can't change someone's mind about that, right? We have our preconceived ideas of who you want your child to date, and it's definitely not your best friend who's 20 years older than them. So I think
Yeah.
that I don't think it was resolved completely, but I think that it didn't end with the mom with a more open mind.
Yeah, and I think it's because she sees the two of them together. Like, she sees them as a couple, and also the fact that Erica's, encouraging Troy to pursue like his music dreams, which like his mom again hasn't supported whatsoever. So I mean, Erica like takes on the role of like girlfriend, but also manager, and also, not parent, but like she does take on like the encouragement that like his mom isn't giving him and his stepdad isn't giving him. So I mean, she does so much for Troy and he supports her right back. But I think if anybody saw the two of them together, it's clear that like they really do, they're partners. Like, they really do lift each other up.
Yes, because he convinced her to really go for her, songwriting again. I think she stopped.
Yeah, and she finally feels inspired. I mean, we've seen that before in romance for sure, is, finding that inspiration that you've lost, and the fact that they do that together. Because I kept thinking, oh, this is going to end with like them becoming like a singing duo or something.
Well, I thought she was going to become his songwriter, because there's that scene where she says, "I can't be your agent," and she like basically, forces him to sign off on someone else being his agent. And I like that the confidence of a 20-something-year-old, lady who's like, "No, this is how I want it, and the world has to accept it."
Yeah, and I thought it was a nice kind of treat and also surprise when in the end the song he decides to sing at this big concert is, the one, her old song, not even the one that they wrote together or the one that she wrote kind of for him, about him, but like the old song she had that she has like bad memories attached to, that he sings the song and like creates new memories. I was like, oh, that's precious. And I feel like anytime I find myself surprised while reading a romance novel, that's something to be said, because you don't get a ton of surprises in romance.
Yeah, that was definitely a very sweet moment. And for her to really come into her own and have faith in her creativity again.
That's sweet. It's, again, I mean, you hear the pool boy, you see this like sexy as fuck cover, you hear about the fact that it was based off of porn tropes. So, I mean, you definitely come into this with like a very specific idea of like that this is just going to be a raunch fest, and the fact that there's so much heart and emotion tied to it really did impress me.
And that's what keeps me reading in a romance. Like, yeah, I love romances, erotic romances with great sex scenes, but they gotta have that connection, right? That emotional journey together that makes me root for them.
Emotional journeys and food.
Well, there wasn't a lot of food, unless you count the coconut oil.
Yeah, I guess that's my one criticism, Nikki Sloan. There wasn't enough
More
food in it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, do you have any other notes, or should we wrap things up with a few grades for this book?
Let's go to grades.
Okay. I mean, we're back, it's back to school time anyway, right? So it just feels appropriate. So let's give this book a few grades. We are going to be grading for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be. So let us start with heart. What do you think?
I'm going to go for an 8 on heart.
Okay.
I think, like the scene where they had their big fight, I just wasn't quite buying it there. I think it could have been a little more, for me, it's like they didn't communicate. And I think like that's such a cliche way to have a fight, but other than that, I thought it was fun.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think I would give it like an 8 and 8.5 too. And that's a good point though to bring up, that when they do have their fight, it is kind of like a lack of communication, not so much a misunderstanding, but just like the lack of communication. And for a couple that's communicated so beautifully throughout the entire book, it just kind of felt like, this is it. This is going to be the moment that tears them apart. Like, I don't know about that. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's totally fair. How about humor?
Humor.
It's not the funniest of books.
No. Right, because it's so emotional, not
Right.
necessarily angsty, but it wasn't like rom-com. So I don't know what to rate it because if I go low, it doesn't mean that it's bad in that area. It's just
Just that
not
it's not there. We can also rate it as like not applicable, because we've definitely done that with other romance reads before, where, like you said, it's not that it's not entertaining. It's just that it's clearly not meant to be like a funny story. Like there's fun moments, there's, some good banter between the two of them, but is it meant to be a rom-com? No.
Yeah, let's go for not applicable.
Okay, that's fine. We will skip right to the heat.
I'm going to say that's probably a 12.
I think you're right. And you know what? I was thinking about this in comparison with the other books we've read for the podcast, and this is definitely, I don't know if I want to say it's the steamiest read we've had, but I don't know. It might be. It's definitely in the top 5.
And I would say not just because the frequency of sex, but the variety and the
Yes.
emotional element, the power play in between them when they're having sex. That
Yeah.
makes it really hot.
It would be a 13 if Troy didn't tell her that she doesn't need sex toys now that she
Yes.
has him.
Thankfully, she schooled him on that.
Yeah, so that's fine. The fact that she pulls out a sex toy regardless, that'll keep it at a 12.
Yes.
Well, we don't have too much left. We do have to do a giveaway and, of course, do our announcement for next month's book club. But any final thoughts about The Pool Boy before we get to those?
I thought it was really fun. I had a good time reading it, and that's what a book is supposed to do.
Yeah, well said. Do you think, having read this one, that you would either go back and read The Doctor and or read any of the upcoming books in the rest of the series?
I'm going to say probably not, because age gap is not
Okay.
a thing I like, especially with such a huge difference. I think the first book, there's a pretty big difference in age, and I don't know about the new one. So that doesn't quite do it for me. But not to say that, it's not a great book.
Yeah, I will say, though, that the next book, because it's a poly, male, female, I'm a sucker. I love a good poly romance. So that's something that, regardless of age gap or not, I might have to check out.
Do you know if the swords cross, as we like to say on Twitter?
Oh gosh, I don't. I should have asked her. In fact, actually, Nikki mentioned that she's still in the process of writing it. So maybe she doesn't know yet. But Nikki, if you're listening, please let those swords cross, please.
Should we explain this to the listeners, what that means?
Yeah, sure. You know what? I'd love to hear your explanation. So please go for it.
Well, I'm going to go simple. Basically, the men actually touch each other when they're all having sex, right? The swords being their lightsaber.
Trade one penis euphemism for another.
They all know what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's true. No, I'm with you. Because you're right. So many stories we see, and I don't love the term reverse harem, but so many stories we see that kind of fit into that trope. You see a lot of men pleasuring one woman, but I love a good poly romance where we actually see everybody together with everybody.
Right. I mean, why not make use of all the bits and bobs hanging around? It's fun.
Right? Like, why is he sitting over there? He could be involved. Like, everyone can play together. Come on.
Right.
Now I realize that's not for everyone. That's absolutely fine, but it is for me. So let me tell you, I will be reading The Architect. Well, awesome. I'm so glad you joined me for this one, and I'm so glad we got to see at least some sex toys in the bedroom in this story.
I love a good sex toy sighting.
Yes, yeah. So let me do a couple of announcements before we close things out, and I'll start with our giveaway winner for today's book club, who is Beth Cherry. Congrats, Beth. And
congrats, Beth.
yes, Beth has got a nice little giveaway prize package coming her way. And thank you to everybody who participated in the discussion on Facebook. Remember to be entered to win in future book club giveaways. All you have to do is join the book club discussion. That being said, your next opportunity to join us will be in September, and September marks our Back to School series. So in keeping with that theme, our September Boobies and Newbies book club read is Getting Schooled, book number 1 in the Getting Some series by Emma Chase. So,
Ooh.
like I mentioned, the audiobook narrator has a voice like whiskey. I mean, it is just rough and delicious. So please, if you're an audiobook person or not, I mean, you can grab the regular book too. There's no problem there. But grab a copy, follow us on Facebook, join the book club chat. I'll be posting more info about that coming up in the next week or so. And, until then, thank you, Tian Kim, for joining me.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast.
Yes, I'm so excited. And I hope to hear you back on the podcast in future months because I want to talk more about your book.
Yes, definitely.
And until then, we've got plenty of Body Bookworms, book clubs, and boxes for all. So check out Body Bookworms and grab your September quickie box. And happy 5th anniversary. That I really do hope that you're finding a way to celebrate.
I have been celebrating all month, so thank you.
Any final words, any final toy recommendations before I let you go?
Oh my goodness, that's hard. I don't think that there's toys are a one size fits all. Mm-hmm. So if you have questions on what toys might work for you, send me a note through Body Bookworms, or you can join our Facebook group and ask away for recommendations.
Yeah, I shouldn't have even asked. Like that's a whole other podcast. Like we would just be getting started.
Yes, and I love talking about that, so we can always do that too.
Yeah, another time, another podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Boobies and Newbies is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts you'll love at frolic.media/podcasts. You can follow Boobies and Newbies on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Boobies Podcast.